A name is called out in the void. A mysterious woman with striking red hair and eyes whispers the name Inori. Her hand, with polished red nails, gently caresses his cheek. Inori, a high school student, finds himself floating in a strange, watery abyss with this unknown woman. He looks at her, his mind racing with questions. Who is this woman? Suddenly, a splash of blood cuts through the scene. Inori looks down in shock to see a sword plunged into his chest, his hand instinctively grabbing the blade. The woman who was just caressing him is the one holding the sword. Tears stream down her face as she looks at him with sorrow. Inori is bewildered. She just stabbed him, but why is she the one crying? And the biggest question of all, how does she know his name? The scene abruptly changes. A hand twitches, revealing a manga titled Cry Baby Teacher's Otherworld War. The violent dream gives way to the mundane reality of a high school classroom. Students are laughing and joking around. And there he is, Inori Takafuji, age 17, seemingly safe and sound at his desk. He dismisses the strange vision as just a dream, surrounded by the familiar chatter of his classmates. It seems to be just another ordinary day at school. Nothing seems out of the ordinary, or so he thought. A sudden glint in his eye suggests something is wrong. Suddenly, a brilliant purple magic circle erupts from the floor, engulfing the entire classroom and everyone in it. A blinding flash of light fills the room as the students scream in terror and confusion. One student is shown panicking, caught in the overwhelming vortex of light. Inori grunts as the force of the transportation magic hits him. He lands on his knees, completely disoriented, trying to process what just happened. As he looks up, he and his classmates find themselves in a vast, empty, unknown space. Inori looks around in shock, the terrifying realization hitting him. The classroom is gone. The students start to panic, their voices echoing in the strange, barren landscape they've been transported to. What the heck's going on? Where are we? As his classmates' confused shouts of, "What is this place?" fill the air, Inori remains silent, observing the chaos. Amidst the panic, a calm, divine voice cuts through the chaos, telling the students to be at ease. A radiant being with flowing blonde hair descends before them, surrounded by a gentle, golden light. She introduces the place as the world's rift, the crossing of souls, and reveals that she is what they would call a goddess. Inori and his classmates are stunned by the revelation. The goddess then explains that they are being summoned by the otherworld. The entire class stands scattered and confused in the strange, empty dimension. The goddess reveals their purpose. They have been summoned as heroes to vanquish the demon lord. The word heroes sparks a wave of shock and excitement among some of the students. She continues, explaining that their souls will be teleported to the kingdom of Hygen, a nation in the world of Vers, a land of sword and sorcery. The students look on in awe, still trying to grasp the reality of being summoned and teleported to another world. Unlike his amazed classmates, Inori clenches his fist. For him, this isn't a surprise. It's a scenario straight out of the fantasy stories he's read. The goddess informs them that their meeting is only momentary, as they will soon be sent on their way. But before they depart, she extends a hand, offering to grant them all a gift. A magical energy descends from her hands, enveloping the panicked students as it imbues them with new power. The goddess declares that each of them now possesses a special ability that fits their new destination. As she bestows the power, she gives them a blessing, to resist the temptation of power and walk the path of the righteous, and be favored by fortune. In a flash, they are no longer in the void, but before a grand, white castle under a clear blue sky. The world blurs into a swirl of light as they are teleported once more. They materialize inside a massive throne room, finding themselves surrounded by courtiers and armored knights. A young woman in a white hood, the Saintess Igia, pants from exertion, announcing that the summoning of the heroes is complete. The royal court erupts in celebration. Marvelous! The heroes are here. We're saved! One of the ministers shouts, before being told to be silent. At the head of the room, a king sits solemnly on his throne, observing the newly arrived students. The regal, white-bearded king rises from his throne. With a formal but grateful tone, he begins to welcome the students as heroes. He introduces himself as Ryzen Hygen, the sovereign of this kingdom, setting the stage for an important request. King Ryzen begins to plead, addressing them as warriors from the otherworld. In a shocking display of desperation, The king and his entire court kneel before the students, begging them to defeat the demon lord. What a grand welcome indeed. Inori, however, remains completely unfazed by the dramatic gesture. One of the students, a practical-looking boy with glasses named Ryudo Shinzaki, steps forward, flustered, urging the king to stand. Putting aside the flattery, Ryudo nervously asks the most pressing question on everyone's mind. Is there any way for them to go back to their world? The saintess, Igia, steps forward, offering to answer his question. She introduces herself and confirms that yes, there is a way for them to return home. She explains that in 1 month, the full moon will rise, which will create the opportunity for them to travel back to their own land. Hearing this, a few girls look relieved as Igia explains that anyone who doesn't wish to join the war is free to stay safely in the palace until that night comes. Inori cynically thinks to himself that with such an easy way out, it feels like they're just being treated as tourists. Another student asks a critical follow-up. If they go back, will a month have passed in their own world? Igia smiles reassuringly. She explains that the summoning does not affect the flow of time in their world. It would be as if they had never left. But Inori's skepticism remains. This all sounds too good to be true. He can't help but wonder what the catch is. Igia then poses the question to the group, asking if anyone wishes to return home, and promises they won't be stopped even if they all choose to leave. Seeing their hesitation, she asks them to reconsider. With tears in her eyes, Igia clasps her hands and pleads, explaining that they are in desperate need of help to save their realm from the Dark Lord. Inori's internal monologue kicks in again. He notes that this is the classic moment where a hero with main character energy should step forward and rally everyone to join the quest. But only silence answers. He looks over the silent, uncertain crowd and dryly concludes that, of course, there's no one like that in his class. Ryudo Shinzaki speaks up again, explaining that this is all very sudden and respectfully asks the king for some time to think it over. Inori watches his classmate's diplomatic approach. Treading with care, are we? He thinks. Can't say I disagree. King Ryzen agrees, granting them a month to decide. But for today, he tells them to enjoy the feast that will be held to celebrate their arrival. The word, feast, immediately captures the attention of one of the more boisterous students, his eyes lighting up in excitement. Even the cynical Inori can't help but crack a small, pleased smile. The generous offer of hospitality has piqued his interest, and his thoughts immediately turn to what kind of otherworldly food he'll get to taste. His mind wanders to the feast, curious about what kind of fantasy world ingredients are used in the dishes. To get to the ballroom, a new magic circle appears. As Inori steps on it, he has a moment of recognition. It's the same circle from his classroom. He realizes they're being moved to the ballroom with teleportation magic and can't help but wish such convenient technology existed back on Earth. His imagination runs wild, thinking about how they could use this for harvesting ingredients. He's now really looking forward to the meal. Just as the teleportation is about to begin, one of his classmates calls out his name with a concerned look. He starts to ask, "Why are you the only one?" But before he can finish his sentence, a flash of light whisks everyone away. Everyone except Inori, who is left behind on the fading magic circle. Inori is left completely dumbfounded, able to utter only a single, confused, "What?" He blinks, utterly speechless as the last of his classmates vanishes, leaving him completely alone. A strange and familiar feeling washes over him. He finds himself standing once again in the vast, empty, ethereal space from before. A familiar voice greets him, welcoming him back to the world's rift, the pathway of souls. The goddess is back, but even she seems confused, pausing mid-introduction with a bewildered, "Ha!" As she floats before him, radiating light, Inori greets her with a surprisingly calm, "Hello again, ma'am." The goddess, still perplexed, asks him, "Weren't you here just a few minutes ago?" Inori simply replies, "Yep." The goddess, looking a bit flustered and caught off guard by this unprecedented quick return, seems at a loss for words, questioning how this could have happened. Inori, completely unfazed, asks if he'll be sent to a different place this time. The goddess uncertainly confirms that it's probable. She explains that regardless of the circumstances, the rules are rules, and she is obligated to grant him another gift for this new summoning. As her hand rests on his head to bestow the gift, Inori just stares ahead with a completely deadpan expression, already tired of this endless cycle. With a quick and unhelpful "good luck," The goddess vanishes, and Inori is enveloped by another summoning circle. He can only mutter to himself about how irresponsible she is. The scene shifts abruptly. A storm rages over a dark, ominous-looking building, signaling Inori's arrival in a much grimmer location. As he materializes, Inori immediately notices that the magic circle is different from the last one. It's yellow instead of purple and features a completely new pattern. Suddenly, a flash of light reveals the eye of an unknown figure watching him from the shadows, hinting at the danger that awaits. Inori's worst fears are realized as he finds himself bound in a straitjacket and chains, a captive in what appears to be a dingy, industrial laboratory. An old, crazed-looking man with a monocle and wild white hair appears from the darkness. This is the old doctor, and he announces with glee that the summoning is complete. The figure from before, a young assistant with green hair and an equally maniacal grin, suggests to the doctor that they should name their new captive subject 12. The young assistant excitedly voices his suspicion that this new subject possesses a rare, attack-type demon eye, while the old doctor eagerly moves in to inspect their helpless captive. Inori's internal monologue begins, filled with indignation and disbelief at being referred to as a mere subject. A close-up on his face shows a mixture of anger and anxiety. His eyes, one of which holds the power his captors are after, dart around nervously. Looking down the dark, pipelined corridor of the lab, Inori can't shake the feeling that this particular summoning is going to be a very bad experience. With menacing grins, the old doctor declares the commencement of their experiment, promising to proceed slowly and carefully, which only makes the situation more terrifying. The young assistant agrees enthusiastically. Inori's cynical side takes over as he internally compares the deranged pair to the classic horror duo, Dr. Frankenstein and Igor. He maintains his unimpressed and stoic facade, though he is internally panicking about his grim situation. His thoughts drip with sarcasm as he resigns himself to his fate. Great. Just great. The old doctor brings a gleaming scalpel menacingly close to Inori's eye, ready to begin his invasive procedure to see what the demon eye is truly capable of. The scene flashes to an informational panel, explaining the lore of this world. Humans summoned from other worlds are said to be granted a powerful ability known as a demon eye. This special power, a so-called demon eye, is said to manifest the moment a summoned individual crosses over, making them valuable and vulnerable targets. And for the old doctor, who reveals a set of wicked-looking tools with a sinister laugh, his job is to prove this myth is a reality, and he's found the perfect subject to do it. Bound and at the mercy of his captors, Inori finally puts the pieces together. He realizes that the gift he received upon being summoned to this world was, in fact, a demon eye. The old doctor's voice commands him to sleep, preparing to subdue him for the impending experiment. He casts a spell, forming a magical sigil in front of his hand. He boasts that this hypnosis will ensure Inori remains completely still. The golden, glowing hypnosis spell floats towards Inori's face, intended to rob him of his consciousness. As the spell makes contact, the old doctor lets out a maniacal laugh, confident in his success. But his laughter cuts short. To his utter disbelief, the hypnosis spell has no effect on Inori. He stares in shock, sweating and unable to comprehend the failure. The doctor cries out in confusion, stating he used an advanced version of the spell. Inori, completely unaffected, internally scoffs at the idea that this pathetic attempt was considered advanced. The young assistant panics and shouts for the doctor, pointing out something unbelievable about their subject. In a shocking revelation, the assistant points out that Inori doesn't have just one demon eye. His right eye is the red demon eye of vision, and his left eye is the golden demon eye of magic circles. The old doctor is stunned into silence, completely floored by the news that their subject possesses not one, but two distinct powers. Their shock quickly turns to manic glee. The young assistant exclaims that a subject with two potent demon eyes is a gold mine, and they both celebrate their incredible find. The old doctor makes a chilling decision. If hypnosis won't work, they will simply proceed with the experiment on a conscious subject. From the shadows, their sinister tools are prepared. The horrific realization dawns on Inori. They intend to cut him open while he's wide awake. This isn't an experiment. It's straight-up torture. A desperate survival instinct kicks in. Inori struggles against his restraints, thinking he has to do something. He resolves to try and use his newly discovered demon eyes to escape. Focusing his will, Inori's left eye begins to glow. A brilliant green summoning circle, different from the one that brought him here, activates on the floor beneath him. The old doctor and his assistant can only watch in utter shock as their priceless subject begins to dematerialize, consumed by the light of the new magic circle. As he fades away, Inori gives a small, triumphant smirk. He has successfully turned his captor's own methods against them. His consciousness is pulled back through the familiar swirl of a magic circle. Oh, perfect timing, he thinks, having escaped just in the nick of time. And just like that, he's back in the ethereal void, his school uniform miraculously intact despite the ordeal. The goddess is rendered completely speechless, her smile frozen on her face, as she sees him return only moments after he left. She stammers out in pure disbelief, unable to process what is happening. "You're back again?" Trying to make sense of the situation, she jokingly asks if he's returning so often because he likes her. Inori, exhausted, just replies that it just happened. Now demanding answers, Inori looks up at her and asks if she truly has no idea what is causing him to be endlessly pulled from one world to the next. The goddess's entire demeanor shifts. She drops the formal tone and admits he's the first person to ever experience this. Promising to investigate, she tells him she'll let him know if he returns, though her speech hesitates for a telling moment. Inori picks up on this subtle change. He realizes her prim and proper goddess persona was just an act, and this more casual, slightly flustered way of speaking is her true nature. What a twist! As another magic circle whisks him away, Inori catches her slip of the tongue. Her use of when instead of if confirms his suspicion. His return is not a possibility, but an inevitability. His memory flashes back to a previous summoning, this time inside a well-lit, stately-looking manor. In the next world, his chaotic journey continued. He recalls meeting an enthusiastic noble girl, Lady Lyde, and a spectacled woman who appeared to be an elf. The elf woman praised her lady's talent, congratulating her for summoning a humanoid monster on her very first try. The monster, of course, was Inori. Inori, showing a flash of fangs, begins to retort, offended at being casually labeled a monster. Before he could properly protest, he recalls how they mistook him for a simple summoned beast and attempted to bind him into a pact of servitude by pricking his hand. He managed to pull away at the last second, leaving Lady Lyde and the elf woman staring in horror as he made his escape. But his escape wasn't his own doing. As he recalls, the timely activation of yet another magic circle saved him from servitude. And so, with a sparkling grin, he found himself back in the goddess's realm once more, cheekily announcing his return. The goddess could only react with pure exasperation, groaning at his reappearance. Back in the present, Inori stands before her again, demanding to know if she's figured out the reason for his chaotic interdimensional travels. She replies that she sort of has, and that she'll be brief since their time is, as always, limited. She begins her explanation. The subjects of summoning are, fundamentally, humans who possess strong souls. It is the strength of these souls that is required for the soul to be able to cross over from one world to another. The visual of a soul, blazing like a comet, illustrates its journey across the dimensional void. And Inori, she explains, has an extraordinarily strong soul, which makes his situation an incredibly rare case. Inori questions this, unable to understand how he could be so special. He argues that he's just an ordinary high schooler, not some great saint. The goddess clarifies that the strength of a soul has nothing to do with one's disposition or moral character, but rather it is determined by the strength of one's ego. She then provides the solution. This endless cycle will finally stop once he is bound to a world by something powerful like the pact of a hero, which anchors his soul to a single reality. Another flashback begins, showing yet another castle where he was summoned. He recalls being summoned by a white-haired royal, who looked into a crystal ball and was shocked to discover that his innate skill was the rare and potent skill thief. His demon eye of vision activates as he internally remarks on how cute she is, a fleeting thought before he was inevitably whisked away once more. The flashback continues. On his fourth summoning, he received yet another gift from the goddess. Now armed with the skill thief ability, he was ready to finally end the cycle. He attempted to forge the pact of a hero with the princess of that world, which would bind his soul and stop the summonings. The princess, blushing, eagerly agreed to perform the pact with him. But just as he was on the verge of success, his hope was shattered. A sinister black magic circle erupted beneath his feet. The summoning magic, indifferent to his will, activated once again, pulling him away from his goal. His journey took another dark turn as he was pulled into yet another world. The fifth time he was summoned by black magic. His summoner was a mysterious, hooded figure, shivering as they chanted from a tome in a candlelit room. And because he was summoned by dark arts, the gift he received from the goddess was of a similar sinister nature. As always, he arrived with a sense of tired resignation, now infused with a dark power. The scene shifts to a terrifying, hellish landscape under a blood-red sky torn by lightning, and on the sixth summon, his role was to be something far different from a hero. He was summoned onto an altar, surrounded by a legion of demons and monsters who hailed his arrival, proclaiming that their dark majesty had finally risen. In this world, he didn't become a hero. He became a demon lord. The flashback ends, bringing us back to the present. Inori sits before the goddess, contemplating the chaotic swirl of powers he's accumulated from his bizarre journey. The goddess, looking a bit overwhelmed herself, states the obvious. Through all these trials, Inori has become absurdly powerful. Inori, with his classic deadpan expression, can only agree. Certainly seems that way. However, the goddess senses a change. She tells Inori she has a feeling that the next summoning will be his last. He can only look on with skepticism. Before he departs, she offers to perform one last service. She will combine his scattered and mismatched abilities into a single cohesive power set. Placing a hand on his head, she channels her divine energy, instructing him to check his status as soon as he arrives in the next world. She specifies that he'll be able to see his new, unified abilities using his right eye, the demon eye of vision. And so, the final summoning begins. Inori arrives in a magnificent castle hall as a grand voice welcomes the newly arrived heroes. A familiar sense of resignation washes over him. I guess I'm a hero again, he thinks to himself, already tired of the role. He turns, and his cynical composure shatters. To his utter disbelief, he sees three other figures materialize in the same summoning circle. One of his classmates, a 17-year-old named Ryuto Shinzaki, looks around in bewildered awe, taking in the grand architecture of the castle. Another classmate, 17-year-old Tamaki Karasawa, calls out to her friends, her expression a mix of shock and confusion. The three of them group together, finding comfort in their shared, bewildering experience. And the third, 16-year-old Aoi Isegai, responds in kind, confirming that the three of them were all summoned together. From his throne, the king of this realm looks down at the scene. While the three classmates stand together, a fourth person, Inori, sits off to the side, separate from the group. The king senses that something is amiss. The king, Risen Heigen, grips the arm of his throne, his brow furrowed in thought. He voices his confusion, stating that according to the ancient lore, the heroes were supposed to be summoned in a party of three. The presence of a fourth person was completely unexpected. Inori, who had been sitting quietly, overhears the king's words, and the final, dreadful pieces of the puzzle begin to click into place. His mind races. They were all summoned at the same time, but seeing that his classmates all called each other by name, it could only mean that they know each other. They were the intended group of heroes. The horrifying and deeply embarrassing conclusion dawns on him, which means, after being summoned 6 times, becoming a monster, a skill thief, and even a demon lord, he was now unceremoniously summoned as a fourth wheel. As the three chosen heroes stand before the throne, Inori is left to clutch his head in absolute despair, already completely over this new adventure before it has even begun. The scene is a grand throne room where King Risen Heigen is seated on his throne, looking down at the 4 people summoned to his world. Before him stand 3 students in school uniforms, Ryuto Shinzaki, Aoi Isegai, and Tamaki Karasawa, and Inori Takafuji, who is dressed in a simple black suit. King Risen leans forward with a concerned expression, pointing towards the summoned individuals as he begins to question the situation. He asks if the 3 students are the prophesied heroes, and if Inori is just a regular person who was summoned by accident. From his position, Inori nonchalantly confirms that this seems to be the case. The king is perplexed. He mutters to himself that this is unprecedented, as something like an accidental summoning has never occurred before. Suddenly, a new voice calls out, turning the king's attention away from the summoned group. A young woman with blonde hair tied in pigtails and a regal green dress introduces herself with a flourish. She is the first princess, and she proudly declares that she was the one who summoned them here, telling them they should be thankful. The camera zooms in on her piercing blue eye, capturing her confident and self-assured gaze. Inori watches her, his internal monologue immediately kicking in. He cynically identifies her as the classic pompous princess archetype that every fantasy story seems to have. Ignoring Inori's silent judgment, the princess throws her arms wide, officially welcoming the heroes to the kingdom of the rising sun. She begins her explanation of the world, stating that it is inhabited by humans, demi-humans with animalistic features and powerful demons. For some time now, the humans have been in a state of war with the demons. The conflict has recently escalated. The Demon Lord has established a formal nation for demonkind and has begun a full-scale invasion of the human realms. An image flashes, showing a fearsome, winged demon with purple energy crackling around her as she viciously attacks a terrified human, illustrating the grave danger they face. Faced with this overwhelming threat, the human empire of Manhwa, an ally to their kingdom, sent out a desperate plea for aid to other countries. The symbol of the allied forces, a shield with 4 crossed swords, is shown. Their request was specific. They asked the allied nations to perform the sacred ritual to summon heroes from another world. However, the ritual is not something just anyone can perform. The power to summon heroes is exclusive to women of royal lineage. The princess points a thumb at herself, a smug smile on her face. In other words, me, she declares. She then reveals her grand strategy: to create an entire army composed of summoned heroes. Her plan involves having these summoned heroes undergo extensive training within their respective sponsor nations to prepare them for the war against the Demon Lord. She looks down at them with a self-satisfied smirk, puffing out her chest as she asks for their validation. Awesome, isn't it? This raises immediate questions among the summoned group. An army? Just how many people is this princess planning to summon for her war effort? Inori's face darkens with worry. He's seen this trope before. He can't help but think, I hope she doesn't use us like fodder. The princess continues her speech, telling them they have the great honor of representing the kingdom of the rising sun. She expects them to train relentlessly, become the strongest, and ultimately defeat the Demon Lord. The group listens with mixed expressions of shock and concern. Inori, however, can't help but scoff internally at the name Kingdom of the Rising Sun, thinking it sounds incredibly cheesy. Interrupting the princess's grand speech, Ryudo Shinzaki, one of the designated heroes, steps forward to ask a critical question. The princess looks slightly taken aback by the interruption. He voices the one question that has been on all their minds. Is there any way for us to go back to our world? The princess's expression immediately hardens at the question. Her response is as swift as it is merciless, a cold and blunt answer that shatters their hopes. No, there isn't. The 3 students, Ryudo, Aoi, and Tamaki, are stunned into silence, their faces a mask of shock and disbelief at the princess's cold declaration. The princess scolds them for their question, suggesting they should be thanking her instead. She reminds them that it's a rare honor to become a hero. While the others are shocked, Inori is merely annoyed. His internal thought reveals his unique predicament. He's not upset about being stuck here, but rather that he misses the kingdom of Hygen, another world he was previously summoned to. King Ryzen decides to move things along. He glances at a mysterious hooded figure beside him and instructs the summoned 4 to place their hands on a stone tablet, called a stele, to confirm their heroic blessings. The hooded attendant steps forward, presenting the stele. It's an ancient stone tablet covered in intricate carvings, resting in a golden box. Ryudo Shinzaki is the first to step up. As he touches the stele, a powerful blue aura erupts around him. His revealed blessing is limit break. Next is Aoi Isegai. A vibrant green light surrounds her as she receives her blessing, barrier conjuration. Tamaki Karasawa follows, and a warm, golden light envelopes her as she touches the stone. Her blessing is mana affinity, signifying a natural talent for magic. Finally, it's Inori Takafuji's turn. As he places his hand on the stele, a faint yellow glow emanates from it. His blessing is simply detection. Watching from his throne, King Ryzen lets out a sigh of relief. He's just glad that Inori, the boy who was summoned by mistake, received any blessing at all. Inori, however, is far from relieved. A close-up on his eye reveals his deep-seated disappointment. He internally lists the others' blessings. Limit Break, a powerful offensive ability, Barrier Conjuration, a top-tier defensive skill, and Mana Affinity, a sign of immense magical potential. In stark contrast, his own blessing, Detection, sounds like a simple utility skill more suited for a thief or a rogue, not a hero. Following the ceremony, the four of them were immediately subjected to a series of physical and magical aptitude tests to gauge their abilities. During the physical test, a simple run across a field, Inori is already struggling to keep up, dashing desperately while the other three pull ahead with ease. As expected, Ryudo, with his Limit Break, demonstrated monstrous physical abilities, effortlessly destroying everything in his path. The girls, Aoi and Tamaki, aced the magical aptitude tests, with Aoi demonstrating her powerful barrier magic, and Tamaki showcasing her extraordinary magical capabilities, wielding powerful fire and lightning with natural talent. As for Inori, his performance was less than stellar. He discovered he did possess some magic power, but he grunted in frustration as he failed to control it, a small spark of energy fizzling out in his hand. His physical abilities were just as disappointing. In fact, he felt even weaker and more sluggish than he did back on Earth. He's left panting and sweating, completely exhausted, while in the background, the three true heroes chat amongst themselves, not even breaking a sweat. He felt a slight sense of shame, realizing he was being so thoroughly outclassed, especially by the girls. Slumping to the ground, he lets out a defeated sigh. Ha! I'm beat. He could only rationalize the massive gap in power by reminding himself that they were the chosen heroes, and he was not. From a distance, he watches the three of them grouped together, a clear line separating him from their circle. Later that night, the day's exhausting tests now over, Inori was invited to Ryudo's room along with the other two heroes to discuss what they should do next. Upon entering, Inori can't help but note that the hero's room is significantly larger and more luxurious than his own. Meanwhile, Tamaki questions Ryudo, asking why the regular guy was invited to their meeting. As Inori sits awkwardly by himself, Tamaki voices her opinion more bluntly. She declares that since they are the heroes and he is not, he has no reason to be included in their strategy session. Inori gives a wry, knowing look. He can hear every word she's saying, and her lack of subtlety is almost comical. Tamaki tries to play it off, claiming she's not actually worried about him. Inori immediately recognizes her behavior. She's a classic tsundere, pretending not to care when she actually does. He gives a slight, amused smile. She's clearly not very good at hiding her concern, despite her abrasive attitude. Ryudo, acting as the group's leader, quickly shuts down Tamaki's complaint. He insists that Inori stays, arguing that his detection skill could come in handy later on. Inori listens silently, taking in the scene. He notes with interest that these so-called heroes have conflicting opinions about his presence and value. Ryudo continues, acknowledging Inori's lack of combat abilities. He then delegates Inori's safety to Aoi, the barriermancer, telling her she will need to protect him. Aoi, ever the quiet one, simply agrees to the arrangement without any argument, telling Ryudo, if you say so. Inori observes her, noting how different she is from the loud and aggressive Tamaki. He finds her soft-spoken nature and her expressive face to be quite cute. He reflects on his situation. Not only are these three blessed with incredible power, but they're all good-looking too. What a life! He thinks with a touch of sarcasm. Getting back to the main topic, Tamaki asks the crucial question that will decide their future. So, you think we should stay here? Ryudo pauses thoughtfully. Before he can answer, Tamaki enthusiastically makes her case, arguing that they should absolutely stay, since they've been treated so well so far. Ryudo then concurs with her. Tapping his finger on the open notebook in front of him, he declares with conviction, we should all stay. But as Ryudo speaks, Inori discreetly uses his detection skill. Placing his hand over the notebook, his ability reveals a hidden message written on the page. They're spying on us. Don't say anything that'll draw suspicion. The other three, engrossed in their conversation, notice nothing. Inori's mind races. This changes everything. And it's all thanks to the useless blessing he received. A confident, knowing smirk spreads across Inori's face. The heroes think he's just a powerless tagalong, but he's just uncovered their entire charade. He thinks to himself, Looks like I have the first win. Inori Takafuji reflects on his detection blessing, a skill he initially dismissed. He now realizes it's a surprisingly useful ability, as it allows him to sense the presence of living beings, even through walls. And right at that moment, his skill alerts him to someone eavesdropping on them from behind the door to their room. He peeks out to see a maid who had just been tending to their room. This confirms his suspicion. Inori reasons that this means the person listening in is either the same maid who came back for some reason, or a complete stranger, which is a more concerning possibility. Not wanting to alert the spy, Inori discreetly writes a note to one of his companions. Not sure if they'll notice, but could you create a soundproof barrier, Aoi? The others, Aoi, Kojiro, and Tamaki, are startled by the sudden and secretive request. Understanding the urgency, Aoi gives a determined nod, ready to use her ability. A green, magical aura begins to emanate from her hands as she starts to cast the spell. With a determined hup, Aoi stretches her arms, expanding the energy into a full soundproof barrier around them. She strains, admitting, it's working, but she can't hold it for long because she's still new to wilding magic. Kojiro, ever the charmer, gives her an enthusiastic thumbs up. This is awesome. Thanks, Aoi, he exclaims. Inori looks on, thoroughly unimpressed. Seriously? He thinks to himself, you're flirting right now? Now that they can speak freely, Tamaki is the first to voice her frustration. Why are they spying on us anyway? She asks. Kojiro offers a pragmatic explanation. Well, if you think about it, the blessings of heroes could pose a serious threat to the kingdom and the world if they fall into the wrong hands. I'm not surprised that they're doing this, Tamaki retorts angrily. But they're the ones who summoned us without even asking for our consent. This isn't fair. Inori cuts in with his own theory. I think they're desperate. The others look at him, surprised. I can't say this with full confidence since I know nothing of this world. But there are so many indications that the kingdom is not doing well financially. He elaborates on his points. First off, the king is exposing himself a lot. It shouldn't be this easy to have an audience with a monarch. Secondly, the number of guards and subjects seem a bit too low. Tamaki starts to argue. That's what I thought at first too, but the food looked quite expensive. Tasty too. She recalls the meal they were served, which she found to be well-seasoned and fancy. Inori immediately counters her point. Delicious? What? It was horrible, he thinks, revealing a stark difference in their palates or perhaps his own unique constitution. Tamaki brings up another point. Well, okay, but what about this room? For a hero, it sure looks small and simple. It looks more like a footman's place. But to Inori, this room is an upgrade. It's still bigger than my room, though, he thinks. A small comment that reveals more about his past than he lets on. Inori continues his internal monologue, thinking about how his friends must be amazed at his sharp analysis. He credits his insight to his past experiences, specifically his first summoning to the kingdom of Hygen, which serves as a perfect, albeit grim, basis for comparison. He concludes the discussion by laying out a plan. They may have to escape this kingdom, and they can use his detection skill to do so. However, the bigger problem of finding a way back to their own world still remains. His friends fall silent. Kojiro is the first to speak, reminding them that the first princess explicitly stated there was no way for them to return home. Tamaki counters that the princess might be lying and hiding the method from them. Beside her, Aoi looks down, worried about the grim possibility. Inori agrees, suggesting the kingdom would do anything to keep its only hopes from leaving. He sighs, knowing that this situation won't be easy to navigate. Kojiro, ever the pragmatist, agrees with Inori's points but suggests a cautious approach. Right now, we're still weak and we know nothing. Let's go with the flow for the time being. Suddenly, the conversation halts. Tamaki leans in close to Inori, looking at him with intense scrutiny, leaving him utterly confused. Your left eye looks strange, she says, pointing it out. Why is it yellow? A bead of sweat drips down Inori's face as his secret is exposed. He panics internally. I forgot about my odd, non-matching eyes. I look so suspicious right now, he thinks, burying his face in his hand as Aoi watches on, concerned. Kojiro steps in to mediate. Tamaki, he begins. Everyone's got a secret they want to hide. Meanwhile, Inori tries to play it cool, covering his eye. With a knowing smirk, Kojiro smoothly provides a cover story. He's going through that phase a bit later than us. You should give him a break. Inori instantly understands the implication. Does he think I'm an emo kid wearing color contacts? He wonders, still hiding his face. Though embarrassed, Inori realizes it's a perfect excuse. Actually, that's quite a convincing character to play. He thinks, a wave of relief washing over him. Suddenly, a voice cries out in protest, "Anime isn't a phase." Later, alone with his thoughts, Inori decides it's time to get some answers. These demon eyes. What skills did they give me again? The group discussion is over, and Inori now sits alone on his bed, ready to finally confront the truth about himself. He focuses his mind. The status window. It should appear when I picture it in my head. With a soft ding, a holographic green screen materializes before him, reflecting in his mismatched eyes and displaying his hidden information. And there it is in plain text. His name, Inori Takafuji, and his race, demon, vampire, baron. He observes his stats, noting the numbers seem high, but without any average to compare them to, it's hard to tell for sure. This revelation brings up another question. He flashes back to an aptitude test where he was panting and exhausted. How was I so bad at the aptitude test with these stats? Putting that question aside for a moment, he decides to dig deeper for clues. Whatever. Let's see what skills I have. He scrolls through his skill list. Demon Eye of Sight, Demon Eye of Magic Circles, Skill Thief, Advanced Black Magic, and Detection? Inori looks over the list, realizing with a start that he gained all of these powerful and varied abilities from his multiple, unwanted summons across different worlds. He even recalls the third summon, a vague memory of a cheerful but naive princess. Each event added another layer to what he has become. He stares at his status screen, the words confirming the unbelievable truth of his new identity. A wry smile plays on his lips as his fangs glint. So the summoning really did turn me into a demonic vampire, he muses. Or should I say, a humanoid monster? He discovers a crucial debuff, Sun God Scorn. As a creature of the night, his stats are reduced by a staggering 90% during the day. A light bulb goes off in his head. Aha! This explains why I flopped in the afternoon test. He vividly remembers that moment, feeling dizzy and weak under the bright sunlight, unable to keep up while others were fine. It all makes sense now. Another memory surfaces. His sudden aversion to the dinner they were served. It wasn't just bad cooking. He hated it because the dish contained garlic, a classic vampire weakness. He also re-examines the moment he first met the girls in his group, and comes to a chilling realization. He wasn't drawn to their looks, but to the intricate network of blood vessels flowing just beneath their skin. His new instincts were taking over. Overwhelmed, Inori slumps on his bed. He laments that he failed to notice all these changes happening to his own body because he was so focused on using his detection skill to scan for external threats. He covers his mouth in regret, thinking about how he only realized too late about his mismatched eyes and, more importantly, his transformation into a vampire. But despair quickly turns into determination. He decides to take this as an opportunity to truly understand himself, resolving to start by digging into each and every one of his newfound skills. The traumatic memories of being summoned, a process filled with screams and pain, flash by, a stark reminder of the price paid for his newfound power. Inori Takafuji, a young man with dark hair and distinctive heterochromia, calmly reflects on his situation. Thanks to those chaotic summons, he's obtained a wide variety of skills. He begins his review with one of the first skills he acquired, Detection, an ability that allows him to sense the presence and activity of other creatures within a certain range. Next up is another skill. He reaches for a simple candle, intending to demonstrate its power. Holding the candlestick, he explains that this particular skill uses mana to forge a weapon from any material at hand. He focuses his energy, and the mundane candle begins to glow with a brilliant, golden light, reshaping itself between his hands. The name of this versatile ability is Craft Weapon, and just like that, the wax and wick have been transformed into a sharp, gleaming knife. Inori looks at his creation with a hint of sleepy satisfaction. But his abilities aren't just limited to crafting. Some skills manifest physically, like his right eye, the red demon eye of vision, which grants him a whole suite of sight-based powers. As the name implies, it specializes in everything related to sight, from seeing microscopic details to replaying images he's seen before. Then there's his left eye, the yellow demon eye of magic circles. He admits to himself that, unlike his right eye, he has absolutely no idea how this one actually works. The skill description states that it allows the user to see a magic circle, move it into their pupil, and then activate it at will. He finds the explanation completely nonsensical for the time being. He sighs, deciding to shelve that mystery. He'll come back to it once he's had a chance to properly learn how magic in this new world operates. Inori glances over his extensive skill list again. There are still so many abilities he knows nothing about, their names offering little clue as to their function. However, one skill catches his attention with its simple and straightforward-sounding name, Drain Blood. A small, predatory grin spreads across his face. The skill's description is chilling. If he fatally drains someone, he can turn them into a ghoul. And if the victim is a virgin, he has the option to feed them his own blood to create a vampire servant. If he chooses not to give them his blood, they will simply reanimate as a mindless ghoul, a horrifying creature of the night. A sinister smile plays on Inori's lips as the realization dawns on him. With his eyes glowing ominously, he understands he can turn the dead into his familiars using nothing but his own blood. And there's more. If he drains every last drop of blood, he gains the victim's memories and skills. The thought gives him a slight pause. Goodness, he thinks, I really am a monster. The implications are staggering. On top of making others his servants, he can steal their entire life's worth of knowledge and experience. The power is immense. He lays back on his bed, a thoughtful expression on his face. So I can do all that at night, huh? The possibilities are endless. A feeling of satisfaction washes over him as he flexes his fingers. After all the pain and confusion, he can't deny that it feels good to be powerful. But as he contemplates his dark abilities, he knows he needs a plan. First things first, before he can make any moves, he must get used to this body and understand the world he's been thrown into. The scene shifts to a bright, sunny day at the castle. A voice calls out, announcing the arrival of Igiana Esh, the Knight Commander of the Kingdom of the Rising Sun. She stands before the group of summoned heroes, Inori, and 4 others who were summoned alongside him. With an authoritative and stern expression, Igiana, a tall blonde woman in a striking red uniform, introduces herself not just as the commander, but as their new physical combat instructor. Inori is taken aback. In a world that seems like a medieval fantasy, the highest-ranking knight is a woman. Observing her from the group, his cynical mind immediately begins to whir. He shrugs it off, figuring anything is possible in another world. Still, he can't help but wonder if she's actually skilled, or just the best the kingdom could afford. His expression remains neutral, betraying none of his critical thoughts. Igiana addresses 2 of the female heroes, telling them that being magic users doesn't excuse them from learning the basics. They nervously agree. She continues her assessment, noting that they usually start with strength training, but it appears many of the summoned heroes won't need it. Inori scoffs internally. I mean, duh, he thinks, finding her statement painfully obvious. One of the heroes is Ryuto Shinzaki. At 17, his stats are already immense, and he possesses the blessing of Limit Break. Another is Tamaki Karasawa, also 17. While her strength is lower, her intelligence stat is massive, aided by her Mana Affinity blessing. And then there's 16-year-old Aoi Isegai, a barrier magic user whose vitality and MP are off the charts. Inori dryly observes their statuses. They're not just strong. They are, for all intents and purposes, literal superhumans. Igiana tells Ryuto, Tamaki, and Aoi that once they've learned the basics, they'll be free to choose their specializations. But then, her attention turns directly to Inori, and he looks up, confused. Unlike the others, he is singled out. He will be forced to undergo intense physical training. Igiana's orders are clear. He will train until he meets the rigorous fitness standards of the kingdom's military. And so, while the other heroes watch, Inori is forced to do push-ups in the dirt, struggling to follow the commander's orders. He pants, sweating under the bright sun. For Inori, the daytime is a nightmare now that he's a vampire. The sunlight makes him incredibly sleepy and gives him splitting headaches. But Commander Esh is relentless. She vows to personally see to his success and yells at him to hustle. Inori pushes through the dizziness, his vampiric weakness making the basic exercises feel like torture. He grits his teeth, worried that at this rate, he'll be too exhausted to even think about escaping when the opportunity finally arises. Just then, a cheerful greeting cuts through the air. Two royal figures emerge from an archway, a peppy blonde with twin pigtails, and a more composed woman with light brown hair. Inori looks up, his face etched with exhaustion and annoyance. He immediately recognizes the blonde. Ugh, he groans internally. It's that annoying princess again. He notes that she's accompanied by a maid, which must mean she's also a member of the royal family. He admits she's pretty, but something feels off. Her posture seems somewhat stiff, and her gentle smile strikes him as completely fake. Commander Esh, surprised by their visit, formally greets the two princesses. Inori's suspicion is confirmed. The new girl is a princess as well. He remains on the ground, looking bored. The second princess reassures the commander, stating that they are simply there to observe the hero's training. The first princess, however, can't resist making a scene. She proudly declares that she has allocated her precious time to witness their first steps, and that they should consider themselves honored. Still lying on the ground, Inori smirks. He figured she'd say something just like that. Her arrogance is predictable. Suddenly, the second princess approaches him, introducing herself. It seems she came here specifically to meet him. She introduces herself as the second princess of the Kingdom of the Rising Sun. But then she adds a new title. He can call her his daytime tutor. Inori can only look up in confusion. The scene shifts to a palace chamber, filled with books. The second princess lays out his new schedule. Physical training with Commander Esh in the morning, and in the afternoon he will attend her class. The one-on-one situation feels incredibly awkward. Inori looks to the side, now fully understanding his position. Yep, he thinks. I'm definitely the black sheep of the group. He realizes that the other three main heroes are taking the first princess's class in an entirely separate room. He sees the first princess addressing the other heroes. He is being intentionally isolated, and he can't help but wonder why. The reason echoes in his mind, the first princess's dismissive words. I have no time to waste on someone who's not a hero. Know your place, that's why. He's been cast aside. But instead of despair, a cold resolve forms within him. Someday he vows he will make her regret this. The second princess begins her private lesson for Inori, holding a pointer and a textbook with a stern but elegant demeanor. Before she can even start, Inori raises his hand, interrupting her to ask a question. The second princess gives a pleasant smile, seemingly happy to indulge his curiosity as she tells him to go ahead. Inori then asks a rather sensitive question, inquiring about her relationship with the first princess and if she is younger, conjuring an image of the boastful first princess and her more demure sister. With a knowing, almost sly smile, the second princess corrects him, stating that it's actually the other way around. She vaguely explains that she is the older sister, but her younger sister was made the crown princess due to complicated reasons. Inori immediately assumes that complex politics must be involved in the line of succession. He recognizes that while he's curious, royal succession affairs are a messy and dangerous business. Looking at the textbook, which shows images of a witch and a complex magical diagram, Inori wisely decides that it's best to mind his own business for now. With the question settled, the second princess resumes her lesson, pointing to the blackboard to begin explaining the history of the Kingdom of the Rising Sun. She tells him that the kingdom was founded by a powerful sorceress, one of the original heroes, as an image flashes of a mage casting a powerful spell. This legendary sorceress was the one who defeated the very first demon lord. The second princess continues, explaining that because the kingdom's founder was known as the witch, the entire society revolves around a witch religion that traditionally places women at its center. This has led to a long history where, for generations, queens have been crowned as the true monarch of the land. Their husbands, the kings, have only been able to rule the kingdom alongside them as regents. And although the kings are technically rulers, the queens hold the ultimate power and can always take it away from them through divorce. The scene returns to Inori's perspective, as he internally summarizes that the second princess taught him the fundamentals of the kingdom's history and magic. However, he found it all to be boring stuff, and had actually fallen asleep at his desk, much to the quiet consternation of the princess. As night falls over the castle, the scene transitions to later in the evening. Inori sits on his bed, recalling the princess's instructions. She would teach him the theories of magic tomorrow and practical magic the day after. He flips through a tome of basic magic that she had also lent to him. He reflects on the princess's demeanor. She had smiled like a robot, even though he slept through her lesson and then brazenly asked to borrow the book. He smirks, knowing it definitely wasn't a genuine, happy smile. Looking at a magic circle within the tome, he feels a sense of excitement. Despite the boring lesson, he now has everything he needs to conduct some new experiments. Time for an experiment. He activates one of his unique skills, the Demon Eye of Magic Circle, causing his left eye to glow with a golden, intricate pattern. The plan is simple. Look at the magic circle in the book and use his eye to save its pattern, hoping to replicate the spell himself. His goal is to save the magic circle's pattern in his eye so that he can activate it at will. But after a moment, nothing happens. He sits on his bed, confused, wondering if the saving process even worked since he didn't feel anything. He tries again with other magic circles from the book, but after silently trying multiple times, none of them worked. He closes the book, frustrated, thinking to himself, "Welp, that sucks." But then, a new idea suddenly strikes him. He remembers his other unique skill, the Red Demon Eye of Vision, and wonders if he can use that one instead. Putting his new plan into action, he sits down at his desk with a fresh sheet of parchment and a quill. With intense focus, he begins to meticulously draw a complex pattern with black ink. Activating his Red Demon Eye of Vision, he confirms that he can clearly picture the image he needs to replicate. The image in his mind is a memory of an advanced hypnosis magic, recalling a doctor ordering him to sleep and stay still. He remembers this was the magic used on him by the doctor in the world where he received his demon eyes. He knows that drawing such a complex pattern from memory should be impossible. But thanks to his Demon Eye of Vision and its powerful memorize image skill, he successfully draws the entire complex hypnosis circle onto the parchment. As he looks upon his completed drawing, he can still picture it clearly in his mind, and suddenly his other eye, the golden demon eye of magic circles, begins to spark and react to the image. A jolt of energy courses through him. He can feel that something is different this time, and he sweats in anticipation, wondering if his new method actually worked. Eager to test his theory, he decides to see if he can use the magic now and rings a small bell to summon a servant. A moment later, a maid with neatly braided blonde hair and a professional demeanor enters the room. She bows and politely announces, "I have answered your summon, Sir Inori. How may I assist?" Inori sits on his bed and asks the maid, "Ms. Nala, could you do me a favor?" Leaving her to wonder what he could possibly want. Without waiting for an answer, Inori unleashes the spell. The hypnosis magic circle he drew flashes to life in his golden eye. Nala is caught completely off guard as glowing golden rings of magic erupt around her, causing her to let out a cry of surprise. A close-up of her eye shows the intricate pattern of the hypnosis circle reflected in it as the spell takes hold. The spell is successful. Nala's eyes now glow with a faint golden light, swirling with the hypnotic patterns of the magic. Inori confirms that the spell worked. He decides to test the extent of the hypnosis by asking her a random question. He asks a rather inappropriate question to test his control. "Could you tell me the color of the underwear you are wearing today?" Under the spell's influence, she calmly and obediently answers, "Black." With both of his demon eyes glowing, Inori takes a quick glance, using his X-ray vision to confirm that Nala is indeed telling the truth. He brings a hand to his mouth as the gears in his head turn. The first part of his theory is correct. The advanced hypnosis magic works perfectly when channeled through his demon eye of magic circles. But as he processes his success, another sudden realization hits him. He understands that the advanced hypnosis magic he just used is from the same world where he originally received his powerful eyes. This leads him to a critical question about the limits of his power. He wonders if the demon eye can only store magic that he saw, specifically in that world. The chapter ends as he contemplates whether he can learn the magic of this new world, or if he's limited to the powers from his past.